Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Wednesday, it's April 9th, 2025. Today is day 551 since October 7th of 2023. I'm currently in Amman in Jordan. Many blessings to you wherever you might be. So 551 days since the attacks by Hamas and other militants on October 7th of 2023. I'm being in the Middle East. I've had quite a few meetings already in Egypt and just starting meetings in Amman with religious and political leaders, discussing and seeking to coordinate or strategize about what actions religious leaders and civil society and the global community might take to seek to respond to the atrocities in Gaza, the ongoing violence, and what the world is calling the war between Israel and Hamas, what is clearly ethnic cleansing, if not genocide. And as many of you know, I've done these daily updates and videos alongside Fael and others at Churches for Middle East Peace for these 551 days so that we can be paying attention to what's happening, to give witness to the stories that need to be told, wherever they may be. The story of tens of thousands of Palestinians whose lives have been lost, and the 2 million plus people whose lives have been completely destroyed in Gaza, the lives of Israelis and internationals who were killed, more than 1,100 people on October 7th, violence in South Lebanon, Christians and other minority groups who are experiencing fear and uncertainty in Syria, U.S. attacks on Houthis in Yemen, and I could go on and on. So we seek to provide these updates to try to understand what's happening, to know how to best respond, to know how to pray, and to give witness. Many of the updates are from NGOs like Crisis Action, Just Security, Israeli or Arab news sources. I try to have multi-narrative news sources. If you have questions about those, please send us a note at Churches for Middle East Peace. Our goal is to end all violence, to seek a comprehensive peace for all people, that every single human being would be recognized as a precious child of God, worthy of hope for a future without fear of bombs, atrocities, and further devastation. So recent news from BBC and Reuters, it was reported by the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said yesterday that Gaza is a killing field with its civilians stuck in an endless death loop. He was calling Israel's blockade of aid totally intolerable in the eyes of international law. As the heads of 6 UN aid agencies appealed for urgent action to ensure food and supplies have reached Palestinians, there has been a complete siege on Gaza for over a month now. There have been some people allowed out for medical treatment, but humanitarian assistance, food, and other supplies have not been allowed into the enclave. Guterres rejected a new Israeli proposal to control aid deliveries in Gaza, and Israel's foreign ministry accused Guterres of spreading slander and insisted that there was enough food in Gaza. So, according to the UN OSHA, the Office of Coordination for Humanitarian Affairs, 65% of Gaza is now either in Israel's expanded buffer zone or under displacement orders. And they report that almost all flour distribution has stopped and all subsidized bakeries have been shut down as a result of the total blockade on aid entering that began March 2nd. According to the municipality of Gaza, the northern Mekorot water pipeline was damaged last Friday when Israeli forces had incursions into the area. It was previously bringing in 20,000 cubic meters of water per day, which provided more than 200,000 people with treated water directly and 600,000 people indirectly through the water distribution network. That's been significantly damaged. Attempts are being made to coordinate with Israel for the repair of the pipeline, and there's not been success thus far. And so there have also been requests for the last 2 months for the central area that had a damaged water line to be repaired and coordinated, and those requests have been denied. The education cluster reports that 88.5% of school buildings in Gaza have been destroyed or damaged. And one of the things we've been talking about in meetings here is the tens of thousands of students who've been out of school for the last year and a half. You're talking about an entire generation of children missing almost 2 years of school, let alone the trauma they've been suffering, with the ongoing war. According to the Norwegian Refugee Council, the shelter response is approaching a complete standstill because we have nothing left to distribute, despite still seeing massive forced transfers that are happening every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. The lack of supplies and increased desperation inside the Strip have led to a resurgence of looting, which included a report regarding an UNRWA facility that was relayed by OSHA, and reports following data regarding the coordination of Israel with aid convoys in the Strip for the period between March 25th and April 2nd have said that the vast majority have been denied, 60% denied. So this was for coordination with Israel for aid convoys within the Strip, 60% being denied, 6% facing impediments, 30% facilitated, and 4% canceled. Also, reports as of March 27th is all UNRWA international staff have left Gaza. One of the things that we talk about, unfortunately, is that when you have international staff present, is often they can act as a protection mechanism when local communities are present, but sometimes not also. There's been significant mass displacement, not only since the start of the war, but since the recent ceasefire ended, time and time again. The report that recently came out from Gisha said that 9 in 10 Gaza residents have been displaced, covering 86% of the territory of the Strip being under displacement orders. From the first week of the war in October 2023 till January 2025, there were 105 evacuation orders issued by the Israeli military spokesperson and Kogat. And there's been just significant analysis of not only the displacement, but then once people are displaced, how often they're redisplaced, and what those realities look like for people seeking to there's no opportunity to even stabilize, let alone rebuild life in the Strip. In terms of the West Bank, Israel has canceled all permits for Gaza and West Bank workers after October 7th, and since reinstated only some 8,000 permits for West Bank workers to be able to re-enter into Israel in certain sectors, though prior to October 7th, there were more than 30,000 workers that were receiving permits. According to the Palestinian Institute for Economic Policy Research, in the second quarter of 2023, more than 160,000 Palestinians were employed by Israelis, mostly in Israel. The minority of them were in Israeli settlements, which was about 18.4% of the workforce in the West Bank. And in the second quarter of 2024, that number declined from 160,000 Palestinian workers working for Israelis to 27,300. So you can just do the math in terms of the devastation that that's having on the West Bank and Palestinian economy. In June 2024, the International Labor Organization reported that the unemployment rate in the West Bank soared to 32% from 22%. And the GDP shrank by 22%. And against the backdrop of ongoing near total ban of workers entering Israel and the dire economic circumstances in the West Bank, more than 50% of Palestinian workers who held permits before October 7th have chosen to withdraw their pensions and consequently and thus lost their ability to be able to work in Israel. Israel's High Court yesterday issued an interim order pausing Benjamin Netanyahu's attempt to fire his former Shin Bet intelligence agency head, that's Ronan Bar. We've been talking about that whole thing with Qatargate, so that just happened. Demanding prosecution for the IDF's killing of aid workers in Gaza, about 360 Israeli medical professionals, half of them doctors, signed a letter demanding the investigation into the killing of 15 aid workers in the Gaza Strip about 2.5 weeks ago, saying they were shocked by the grave incident. The killing of the rescue and medical personnel on duty is a blatant violation of international warfare law, an act contrary to human morality. Also, U.S. airstrikes, it's suspected, have killed 6 people yesterday and injured 16 others in Yemen. And just about 5 hours ago, about 6 p.m. here in the Middle East, it was reported that suspected U.S. airstrikes killed an additional 10 people in Yemen, around Yemen's Red Sea port of Hodeidah. So, of course, these are the Houthi, Iranian-backed Houthi community. They said that an additional 16 people were wounded. This area is the area that's home to the city's airport, where the Houthis have used this area to target shipping in the Red Sea. So there's been this intense U.S. campaign that's been going on for weeks. I talked about that before, where it cost about $1 billion, and how these attacks have not been very effective, according to analysts. But according to recent numbers, the U.S. attacks have killed approximately 107 people in Yemen. U.S. military commanders are concerned that the Pentagon will soon need to move some of its Asia-Pacific stockpiles of long-range precision weapons to the Middle East because of the large amounts of munitions that have been used in the current U.S. bombing campaign in Yemen. Hezbollah is ready to hold talks with the Lebanese president about disarmament if Israel does withdraw from South Lebanon. You'll recall that it's currently in 5 different locations, and if Israel stops its strikes on Lebanon. And in the U.S., havoc has been wreaked on the global markets because of the U.S. tariffs being imposed by President Trump. But today he said he's pausing higher tariff rates for most countries for 90 days while raising tariffs more for China. The markets surged today in response. In a social media post, Trump said that 10% of tariffs will remain for countries getting a reprieve. This, of course, has significant effects here in the Middle East and the Arab world, including on countries like Jordan, Israel, many others. The U.S. yesterday restored its funding to the World Food Program, specifically aid programs in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Ecuador, and Somalia, after terminating them just last week. And a Louisiana immigration judge yesterday said she will terminate the case against the Columbia University student activist Mahmoud Khalil if the government does not soon provide evidence sometime this week to justify its attempts to deport him. The New Jersey governor and a senator demand answers from Israel after the Palestinian American teenager was killed in the past few days in the West Bank. So local leaders in New Jersey are demanding that Israel thoroughly investigate the killing of the Palestinian American dual citizen, the 14-year-old American Amr Mohammed Saada Rabi. He was originally from New Jersey. He was shot and killed in the West Bank. The Israeli army said that he and 2 other teens had been throwing rocks at passing cars, but then a released 10-second video was purports to show the incident. The head of the local Kermis Aya Council rejected the Army's characterization of events and said that the boys were not throwing stones, they were picking almonds. He also said there were settlers in the area at the time who also fired shots, making it unclear whether or not the gunfire came from the Army or settlers. The IDF did not comment. Do also pray for Christians in Gaza and all Christians in the Middle East as Lent continues. There was a lovely article giving an update in the Vatican News about Father Gabriele Romanelli. He's the pastor of the Holy Family Church in Gaza. I had the opportunity to meet him when I was last in Gaza in 2022. He was out of Gaza when October 7th happened and returned to be with his community. He said, our traumatic reality is that we live in a cage. He said, Pope Francis's calls mean so much to us, and he and the parish continue to pray for peace. He said the Pope called us, greeted us, asked us how we were doing and how the people are. He said the people were so happy to hear that they were calling. When the call most recently came in, we were at the door of the rectory inside the compound, and children and young people started shouting, Viva il Papa, in Arabic and Italian. After Pope Francis sent his blessings and prayers, the parish priest noticed that they told him how happy they were to see him and to hear his appeals for peace, especially since the situation is so terrible throughout the entire Strip. Father Romanelli confirms that the living situation in Gaza is unimaginable. He said that we're trying to convince everyone and world leaders that peace is possible. As long as this armed conflict continues, no problem will truly be resolved. To persuade everyone in such a way that this war must end with conditions that matter to the people, that we must work towards peace to stop this war as soon as possible. He said, we're in a cage. He said, thank God, and thanks to the constant help of the Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem, that's under the leadership of Cardinal Pizzaballa. He said, as well as we can do, we're doing in this context, together with our 500 refugees and Muslim neighbors in the Zaytun neighborhood, we're okay for now, but everything is starting to run out. In other neighborhoods, everything, food and water, is already missing. The crisis, he explained, existed long before the war. Imagine now, a year and a half after conflict, the emergency of food, water, and medicine is extremely urgent across the entire Strip. Heavy crosses for the people of Gaza to bear. Gaza is a prison. It has become a cage, a giant cage, he decried, while noting regardless that we help everyone, Christians and non-Christians alike, might we be instruments of peace for all. Father Romanelli acknowledged that it's truly a Lent with a heavy cross for the people of Gaza who try not to give in completely to despair, but we count on the help of the Lord, on the people of goodwill who truly desire peace. So pray for Father Romanelli, all of the Christians of the Holy Family Parish in Gaza, St. Porphyrius Church, all of the Christians throughout the Middle East, for all who are suffering under the current realities in Gaza, and for any who have had losses, who are suffering. Pray for negotiations that they might make positive progress, that peace might come quickly. In the name of Christ. Amen.